I'm selling my used textbooks on Marketplace. I posted 5 textbooks, all different prices. They're first-year books, but some are books from my random elective courses throughout the years. A girl messages me today saying, "Is this still available?" And I asked her which one she wanted to buy. She told me she wants all of them. I was confused, because usually people buy just one textbook here and there, but relieved to have all of them gone so quickly. But then things took a weird turn. Of course, I stalked her Facebook profile, and her location is from California, and I'm selling my books in Ottawa. She only has a profile pic of a gavel and a cover picture of her face. Her high school says Texas High School, which I feel like isn't a real school name. Then she says to me, text me, and gives me an area code of 275, which I Googled, and there is no location for that number. I don't give my number out to strangers, so I declined and said to continue texting on Facebook. Then when I told her I prefer cash, she just responded a moment, liked my message, and then never replied back. All of her texts are poor grammar, and some don't even make sense. I was going to sell her the textbooks in a public area downtown Ottawa, but now I feel like something scary could happen if I actually went through with this transaction. What kind of scam do you think this could be? Or am I just really paranoid? This first one was a CB who tried to guilt me into shipping an item to him and to also give him the item for free. Whenever I get an inquiry, I check out the person's profile to make sure they are legit. This guy seemed legit at first. He mostly talked a lot about all the fancy cars he had purchased, which raised suspicion when he told me he had one. First moved to the region too. Didn't know the public transit and didn't know how to get to my area. He kept texting as if without this item, he'd be screwed and that he desperately needed it, and would I be so kind to come out to his area or mail it to him? And I'm like, no, mostly because the item at hand isn't something life-saving, nor is it worth the price of shipping, and I don't want to go to him because I don't know him or the area. This guy lived 3 towns over from me, and I'm talking like a 10-minute bus ride at most. After a while of him basically whining, I stopped answering. And what was the fuss all about? A $5 Martin Luther King Jr. graphic novel. I was trying to sell Canadian flag playing cards for $1. A single dollar. This lady contacted me about them, and she was in the same town as me. When I told her where I wanted to meet, she confirmed she'd be there. Then, as I was waiting at the meeting point, she asked for the location again, freaked out when she found out how far it was, and then pestered me to come to her. Would I take 50 cents? Where are you? Why aren't you here yet? I'm waiting. Lady, it's been like 5 seconds since your last text. Then for days silence. Then at 8 a.m. on a Saturday, a grenade of text spurts off about how she now wants them, and it's not too far. And why aren't you answering? When can we meet? Can you pick up? I just told her they sold, blocked her, and deleted the listing like sweet fuck. I am selling a Funko figure that is selling for well over $150. I'm selling it for $20. I know no one will pay $150 for something like this. It's just too steep a price. Hell, even I wouldn't drop $150 on this. This person contacts me if it's still available. I reply right away, and then hear nothing for over a week until today. They want me to trade with them, like what? I understand trading cards, or for one post, trading a bigger fish tank for someone's smaller tank. Yes, really. So I said I wasn't interested. Get a thumbs up, and then they send pics of what they wanted to trade with. It was an original ghost face from Scream, the type of figure that, after Googling, can be sold for upwards of $500. Then I found out the figure they wanted to trade with me was a fake worth nothing. Just the sheer audacity of trying to Uno card reverse my decision and get me to trade for a fake for a $20 thing is fucking ridiculous. I came back here to add this 4th one, which, as I am typing, just happened to me. At 9:38, I got a message where someone offered me $3 for Xbox One, the Master Chief Collection. I'm selling it for $10. I was kinda stunned because I'm like, WTF. This isn't like the playing cards. The game has been well taken care of because I've played it legit twice. The collection can take up 120 freaking GB of storage, so I uninstalled it soon after getting it. Looking online, on Amazon you can purchase the collection new for over $40. Used it's $20 to $40 still, GameStop and eBay prices. $10 is a generous price at that. I tell them no, 10 at the most. They hit back with, you sure? Would you do the deal if I met you in the middle at 5? And I said, sorry, but no. This game is selling for $40 new, $20 used. 10 is a fair enough price already. Thanks for the inquiry though, and have a nice day. And they said some weird goodbye, and then left the group. Looks like this game is going back up to 15 bucks. I'm going to tell this story just to make people aware of the dangers they may be putting themselves in by selling items online. I get a message from someone telling me they want to buy a specific item, and from the get-go the person was pretty pushy. I wanted to make some money, so I responded. The whole time I was talking to this person, something felt off. This person will call, I was being a little bit weird from the first message. I kept changing the time they were coming to get the item. A asked me if I had change for a certain amount, and I said no. This was before A got to my house to pick up the item. I told her they needed to get change because I didn't have any cash. A ends up showing up and had parked around the corner somewhere, so I couldn't see the car. I felt something was off because A handed me the incorrect amount and asked if I had change. I had already told A I didn't. Then A proceeded to ask me to get in their car so we can go get change. I told A I don't get in the car with strangers. I was like, oh, I'm from Europe, and we don't worry about getting in strangers' cars. I'm thinking, yeah, okay, but I'm definitely not going to. A also asked me a lot of unnecessary questions about the watch. It was brand new, and I had already told her this, plus it was just an ordinary wind-up watch to set the time. I went and got change, surprise, surprise, so when this person got back, I could see the car, and a few other people were in the car. I had a really bad feeling, so I just grabbed the money, gave her the watch, and ran back inside. Am I making a big deal over this? If you need more details, I will provide them. Thank you. I know it sounds like common sense. Never go alone to a stranger's house. But you always think, meh, it will be fine. I've learnt my lesson. I was selling a used VR headset over Facebook Marketplace. A man who lived in my town 5 minutes from my home messaged and said he wanted to buy it. Everything went normal, and we agreed that I would bring it to him after work at 5:30 p.m. So today after work, I head over to the address. It's winter, so the sun has set. It's a normal house, normal street. When I knock on the door, a 30-year-old man opens the door. I recognize him from his Facebook page. Instead of handing over the money, he tells me that he has left his money inside and that I should come in. I politely declined, knowing that setting foot in a stranger's house was a big mistake, especially since I was alone. He continued to ask, but eventually he gave up, turned and walked into what I assume was the living room. He emerged a few moments later and stood in the middle of the hallway, holding out the money. He stood far enough back that I would have to walk into his home to get it. The fact that he so badly wanted me to cross the threshold and into his house set off every alarm bell in my mind. I held out the box I was holding slowly with one hand, stood on the path. We stared at each other for a long 10 seconds before he sighed and walked out the house and over to me. He snatched the box out of my hands and dropped the 20 pounds on the floor accidentally. He stood, waiting for me to bend down and retrieve the money. Instead, I put one hand in my pocket, slipping my keys between my fingers in case I needed to inflict some kind of damage to get away. I think he realized whatever his plan wasn't going to happen, because he sighed again and picked up the money for me, handed me the money, and just turned away without another word. I slowly backed out of his garden before jogging to my car, which I'd parked further down the road. Maybe I'm paranoid, but the whole situation made me so uneasy. I just know I won't be doing that again. TLDR sold something online, went to deliver it, and the buyer was adamant I go into his house. So let me preface this story by explaining that I live in a regional town of Australia. There is no sex trafficking problem here. It just doesn't exist. There's no gang activity, no unsolved murders, and no missing people or unsolved crimes. Just to give you the lowdown of the sort of area I live. Also, I'm a transman. I'm pre-T, so I don't often pass for male despite me trying to, and that is probably somewhat obvious by my profile picture in Facebook where I look pretty feminine. Now, on to the story. This happened today, and I'm still unsure whether I should do anything about, or if the police would even bother. I flip furniture as a hobby. I like to pick up free or cheap worn-out furniture, repair it, repaint it, and then sell it on. It keeps my mind occupied. Facebook Marketplace is usually my go-to where I find stuff. So this morning I found a post for free table. I messaged the person asking if I can pick it up today. As I am messaging them, their Facebook profile picture disappeared. I thought that was weird, but maybe they had just changed it. They agreed to a time and flicked me the address. No worries, it's on the edge of town. They send me a random obscure message. Are you coming alone, or will you have your husband with you? Okay, I'm not married, and this is slapping me in the face with red flags, but I think maybe the table is heavy and they think I might need help to carry it. I respond with nah, it's all good, I'll be right. There is no response. I have this uneasy feeling that something isn't right with this. Never felt this way before, and I don't know why I do now, but I figure it's the middle of the day, I've got my phone, and I'm driving, and this is a safe town. Maybe I'm just overthinking the whole thing. So, I hop in my car and head to the agreed place. I couldn't find the exact address on my GPS, which I thought was odd, but nevertheless I find the street. There's nothing there. By that I mean, there's a creek that runs by the side of it. Empty lots with bushland and tall, overgrown grass, a disused, isolated, somewhat motel, and 3 warehouses. By this stage, I am feeling really off. Everything inside me is saying, dude, there is something wrong with this whole situation. I'm paying a little more attention to that feeling at this stage, but keep going. 2 of the warehouses have no signage, but there's a couple of cars out front, and I can tell they're used as businesses of some sort. Their address isn't the one I was given, though. Even though the motel looked like it hadn't been used in years, I see a mid-40s guy sitting on the step of one of the units smoking. I think to myself that's a bit bloody creepy, but maybe he owns the place and is doing some work there and is just taking a break, or maybe he's just a squatter. So I drive down the street a little further and find the last warehouse. The address is where pickup is meant to be, so this must be it. I start thinking maybe they got the number wrong. I mean, this place is tall weeds surrounding it, rubbish out the front, and surely hasn't been used since it was built. I might like free furniture, but I'm not an idiot. I decide I don't want it anymore and message the bloke that I was sorry, but I couldn't find the place. I get a message back saying, are you in the Uda? I saw you drive up and down a couple of times. Are you alone? There's no cars or any sign of life at this warehouse, and by now my intuition is screaming at me to get out of there. Yes, I have a Uda, but I don't see anyone around. How did they know that? I message a reply, yeah mate. Sorry, can't find the place, cheers anyway. I get no response for about an hour, no sorry or anything, Justin, it's the old motel, you have to get out of your car and walk to the back of reception. That same worn-down, isolated motel, with overgrown weeds that hasn't been used for many years, the same one with the weird guy sitting on the step. I message back, what are you talking about, that place hasn't been used in years. I get no response. Nothing. So I head home and sit down for a drink, and to Google this place again, I've forgotten the exact address he gave, so I go back to Messenger to find it, except it's gone. So I go back to Facebook Marketplace, and the whole ad is gone. It's just disappeared, as if it didn't happen. What do you lot think? Did I just avoid something sinister happening? My gut says I did. Creepy free table guy who is likely planning on doing something really bad to an unsuspecting freebie hunter. Let's not meet. Hey guys, I've been lurking for a few days and thought I'd share my own experience. I wouldn't say it was terrifying at the time, it was more just weird and a bit freaky, though what I found out later made everything a whole lot worse. I used to live in a market town in the United Kingdom, and like every town we had our town mascot. You know, that one person everybody knows about. That crazy lady that does loads of meth, or the creepy drunk that shouts at strangers. Yes, that type of mascot. The guy everyone knew was in my place was called Johann, sometimes referred to as Johann the Guitar Man by the locals. He was an average-sized guy, with a dark beard and a happy demeanor, and he was very religious, a born-again Christian. He would often be found on the street corners, talking in tongues while strumming his guitar. He could be also spotted singing one of his songs while giving his posters, every word of which was in rainbow font, to passers-by or waving at school children. That, and he'd have maracas he would shake at random intervals. I guess you could say he was some sort of pseudo-street preacher. To most, he was harmless, though there was a lot of stories floating around about Johann, and at school there would be frequent stranger danger warnings about him. One such story was that he was in a car crash and he had severe brain damage. Another was that he was initially going to study science at the University of Cambridge but had a religious experience and gave it all up. By far, the worst rumor we heard was that he'd raped some young girl, but was so overwhelmed with guilt by the act he'd lost his mind and decided to convert. There were also weird things that Johann actually did do. It was his birthday sometime in July, and he giving out invitations in the street to a party he was going to have. I'm afraid I didn't go myself, though I'm curious if people actually did. His apartment, a place above a shop, adorned with the words, "Jesus loves you," painted across the outside wall, was tiny. And he invited a lot of people. The overall local attitude towards Johann was that even though he was nuts, he was more or less harmless. Over the years, I collected numerous amounts of his posters, and he'd pop in occasionally to where I worked, a local shop, and we'd chat. I even got one of his CDs off him. I probably still have it somewhere. Even teachers I knew would put up his posters in their classrooms. I vividly remember my English teacher displaying rainbow-colored, size 36 words stating, "You are all wonderfully loved," obviously gifted from Johann. Anyway, back to me. I had many experiences with Johann over the years, and most of them were pleasant, generally just saying, "Hi, Johann," as I passed on my way to work and school and whatnot. To be honest, I did get funny vibes off him, but I decided to ignore them. He actually lived on the same street as me, so we were neighbors and I was eventually used to his constant appearances. One particular day, however, he greeted me by name. I had never told him my name. "Good morning, my dear sister, HiragiGhost." I wasn't all surprised by this. He knew the names of a few of my friends, so perhaps they had told him my name at some point. I greeted him in return and told him I was doing fine. I didn't want to talk for too long, as I had to get to my friend's house, so I tried to keep it short. We talked about something menial, probably the weather. I made my excuses to leave, and he ended the conversation with, "May Jesus shower his ever-flowing love on you. Would you like me to bless you today, sister, HiragiGhost?" I thought this was sweet, so I hesitantly agreed, and hey, it would be a funny story to tell my friend, right? This probably wouldn't take too long anyway. Johann proceeded to put down his guitar and roughly grab me by the hand, chanting hoarsely in tongues. It hurt. He had scraped my wrist in the process, and it was then I noticed he had grossly long nails. It would be an understatement to say I was a little freaked. The chanting got more intense, and then he suddenly reverted to English. "May the love of heaven flow over HiragiGhost, her descendants, and all those that care for her. May she find a loving husband to provide for her. May her demons be driven from her soul. Jesus loves you. Jesus loves you. Jesus loves you."
Biles her, biles her, biles her, biles her, biles her.
During all the "Jesus loves you" and "bless her" parts, he was leaping up and down enthusiastically while still holding my hand tightly, scratching me further. He was excited, laughing manically. He then ended the blessing, if you could call it that, with some vicious high-pitched mouth trumpeting, like he was impersonating a kazoo. If it wasn't totally terrifying, I would have laughed. He eventually let go of my hand. I shakily thanked him and walked away as quickly as possible. Of course, after all, that I made my way to my friend's place and we laughed about it, although I showed her my hand/wrist and she was just as freaked out as I was. However, I didn't rule it as intentional harm and we both forgot about it and did whatever we were going to do that day. Eventually, I left town and went to university, forgetting all about Johann. But then, through a pal on Facebook, a link to the local news was posted. Johann had been arrested and was to face trials for stalking and sending threatening messages to a girl around my age. It appeared he was angry at the girl for not responding to his advances after he wanted to be more than just friends with her. And in this town, everyone from around 10 years old and upwards generally had befriended Johann, and the messages became creepily sexual, asking the girl if she wanted a taste of his chocolate cake. He believed the girl was his wife and believed their love was a sign from God, and they were apparently destined to be together. He eventually ended up threatening to kill the girl, her boyfriend, and their families for crimes of adultery. It turns out he was friends with a lot of local gang members, and he was considering sending them to the homes of the girl and her boyfriend. The chilling words on one of his final letters to her said, "God unfortunately says that unless you give up your ways, he will have to execute you. You've seen all the thunder and lightning. Take that as a sign. It would take just one lightning bolt to finish you off, my lovely." What makes it even worse is that the girl used to go to my school, and although it wasn't at the same time as me, I used to work at the same place as her. In that regard, I questioned the motive behind all of the friendly chats Johan would have with me, and whether he did mean harm behind all the oddly rough hand-grabbing. For the most part, though, I believed that he was a man that needed help, but he was largely ignored due to being harmless. It's a shame myself and my old hometown, including that poor girl, had to find out the hard way. He eventually got detained under the Mental Health Act, and I have to say that I'm relieved for him. Johan, as nice as you were in the past, I hope we don't meet again.